Okay, we are here for our last chapter of Kid Artist by David Stabler and Doogie Horner. And as bittersweet as ending this book might be for tomorrow, Pachow. I don't even know if these books realized how similar they are without being the same book. But they're different. They're not even by the same publishing company or authors. So this one was, this one was Kid Artists, about the kids or artists when they were kids, and then we're moving on to artists and their pets. So probably more into adult life, and we'll revisit some of the same artists we've already looked at, like Frida and Warhol over here with the blonde hair. I can see Picasso down here, and I think this is supposed to be Georgia O'Keeffe. And then up here, Dali in the green box right there, which we didn't read about in here. So that'll be cool. I'm sure there's some artists in here we haven't read about. But it's broken up into little chapters, just like our Kid Artist book. So that's what we're going to start doing tomorrow. And I am excited. I have to keep a tally of how many have cats. All right. So we're going to read about Keith Haring. And let's go. Through a Kid's Eyes is the subtitle. What if you could draw like a kid and become a well-known artist? Keith Haring did just that. His bold and colorful illustrations of crawling babies, dancing people, barking dogs, and rocking robots helped make him one of the most beloved artists of the 1980s. I can make any kid smile, Keith Haring once boasted. It's probably from having a funny face and looking and acting like a kid. Kids can relate to my drawings because of the simple lines. One of Keith's most famous artistic creations was a vibrant, glowing infant known as the Radiant Baby. In the 1980s, Keith became famous for drawing this fun image on walls all over New York City. Here we see Keith drawing on a wall. Hey, you can't draw there. So this was usually a lot of the times in the subways he would be drawing. And as you see, it's white. He would use chalk. So it wasn't like permanent graffiti. And he would sometimes like just put black paper on top of the surface, I think. I don't think he painted it black. But he definitely got in trouble quite a few times for vandalizing property because of that. But, you win some, you lose some. For all we know, it might have been a self-portrait. Most babies are born face down. But Keith entered the world beaming up at the ceiling, a position the doctor who delivered him called sunny side up. That happy glow quickly earned him the reputation as the cutest baby in his hometown of Kutztown, Pennsylvania. Another Pennsylvania, just like Warhol, who was from Pittsburgh. And here we have Haring from Kutztown. From the time he was very young, people on the street would stop what they were doing to say hello to him. Keith always said hello back. When it came time to learn how to draw, Keith was just as eager to please. Every night after supper, he would sit on his father's lap, clutching crayons. Alan Haring, who made cartoons in his spare time, showed Keith how to make drawings out of connected circles. Sometimes Alan lined them up lined them up one afternoon, another from... Why am I having a hard time reading the sentence? I'm going to do this again. Sometimes Alan lined them up one after another to form a segmented worm. I don't know why I was reading that wrong. You can kind of see what that might look like in the picture down here. Or he'd put feet on the circles to create a dragon. By following his father's example, Keith learned to use a few simple strokes to turn a circle into a balloon or an ice cream cone or a face. So yeah, you can see all the circles, how they can become something. So that's something I always try to tell students, like when they're trying to figure out how to draw something, is like, look at the shapes that make it up and draw those shapes. So I could see him doing that. That kind of looks like Conan O'Brien. The more they drew, the more advanced the lessons became. Sometimes Keith's father would draw a line and tell Keith to draw another line. Then he would add a third line, and so on, and then back and forth they went, until they had drawn an entire picture together. Keith's mother was in charge of stocking the house with art supplies. Once she made the mistake of thanking her son for not drawing on the walls, and then that gave Keith an idea. One day, when his dad was out painting the roof, Keith plunged his hands into an open paint can and pressed them against the cellar walls. "Look," he said to his mother, "now I've drawn on the walls." That wouldn't be the last time Keith got into trouble for leaving his mark on a wall. "This work is better than a paintbrush." Silly boy. It soon became clear that Keith had his own way of doing things. The usual activities bored him. He joined the Boy Scouts but soon left the group. He briefly played Little League baseball, but he didn't really like sports either. All his energy went into art. But even with that, he was unconventional. When his father made him a drawing table out of an old sheet of plywood, Keith scribbled directly onto its surface rather than on the paper. Soon the wood was covered in doodles. Drawing on everything. As he grew older, Keith began spending more time alone in his room, making sketches and listening to music. He collected fan magazines devoted to pop groups like the Monkees and Herman's Hermits. Y'all probably don't know those, my little children, but that's all right. Hey, hey, we're the Monkees. We're always messing around. Or did they say monkeying around? I don't know. Keith became so fascinated by the Monkees that he started cutting their photographs from the magazines and using them to make collages. He even started his own fan club, complete with a clubhouse that he constructed himself. You can see his little Monkees clubhouse down there. Which is funny, I didn't know he was such a Monkees fan as a kid. When he needed to escape from his parents' rules, Keith walked the 5 blocks to his grandmother's house. There he was allowed to do all the things his parents forbade. On Saturday mornings, Keith would sit for hours watching cartoons of Walt Disney or Looney Tunes. The colorful characters on 1960s TV sitcoms also fascinated him. When Keith began painting as a professional artist, the bright colors and outrageous situations on these shows influenced his art. I can definitely see that. Keith also liked to pore over his grandmother's copies of Life and Look magazines, searching for photographs he could turn into drawings. He flipped on the stereo and blasted songs by Iron Butterfly and the Rolling Stones. Inspired by the music, Keith began drawing scenes from classic fairy tales, which he populated with hippies. I have to look at some of his earlier work now. This porridge is like groovy. Far out. As a teenager, Keith no longer drew as much with his father, but he still liked making art with others. When his younger sister, Kristen, showed an interest in art, they devised a fun activity. They would sit down, face each other, with a piece of paper on the table in front of them. They started drawing, and when Keith yelled, "Stop!" they switched papers. Back and forth they went until they completed their collaborative sketch. Keith even showed Kristen how to paint with her hands, only this time he made sure to stay out of trouble with their mother. He smeared Kristen's hands with paint and then encouraged her to stamp them on paper, not the wall. Soon the sheets were covered in colorful prints. They spent the rest of the afternoon cutting out the handprints and hanging them on a coat hanger to make a mobile. That is a cute idea. Even when he was older, Keith never outgrew his mischievous streak, and he still loved to leave his mark on public spaces. When he was 13 years old, Keith took a job delivering newspapers. One time, a customer was resurfacing the sidewalk in front of her house. Keith decided to carve his initials into the wet cement. Fortunately, the angry homeowner turned out to be the town's high school art teacher, Nita Dietrich. It's hard to do this backwards. Miss Dietrich did not hold a grudge against Keith. especially after she saw his other artworks. In fact, she encouraged him to enter an upcoming art contest held in honor of America's bicentennial celebration in 1976. Keith took up her offer. For his entry, he created a 2-foot tall map of the United States, with each state identified by a symbol. For instance, Florida was decorated with an image of Mickey Mouse. Keith's imaginative map won a prize, the first of many he would garner on his way to being an artist. Ah, that's really cool. He was probably like one of the first people to do something like that. Well, maybe not. After Keith graduated from high school, he studied commercial art at the Ivy School of Professional Art in Pittsburgh. I should show you the picture here real quick. Keith accepting his award for his art. I'd like to thank Miss Dietrich, my sister, and all my friends at the Monkey Clubhouse. He later moved to New York City, where he continued his education at the famed School of Visual Arts. It was there that Keith first began to make a name for himself as a street artist. He became friends with Jean-Michel Basquiat, we read about him earlier, another artist who shared his childlike view of the world, as well as his fondness for drawing in public. In the 1980s, Keith's graffiti-style drawings could be seen on the walls of subway stations all over New York City. Armed with pieces of white chalk, he turned the backgrounds of old rippled-out posters into his own personal canvas. Sometimes he would draw as many as 40 pictures a day. Whoa. Definitely beats my one drawing a day. Besides the radiant baby, Keith became known for drawing flying saucers, floating angels, and other colorful creatures from his imagination. As his drawings became popular, fans and admirers would cut them out of their original street settings and hang them on their walls. Although his artworks became valuable collector items, Keith was never in it for the money. After his death in 1990, a magazine published an article about him entitled Keith Haring. It was the perfect way to remember an artist who never stopped seeing the world through a child's eyes. And here we see it saying, I acquired this at the Prince Street subway station. So that's really sweet. So that's it. We finished it. And my prompt to you guys, I have a couple ideas. So one is you could do like he did with his little sister and trace your hand and make some hanging mobiles of that so that you could hang that around in your house. Or you can also just kind of create your own radiant baby. So if you have chalk at home and black paper, this is a good way to practice what he did. Or even a white crayon could work. And draw your own little simple lines, figures. And then we'll be back together tomorrow to continue reading in a new book. All right, see you guys then.